Once again, me and Nemesis are doing the thing where we upload our reviews at the same time. I'm not the RWBY guy, so I definitely won't have nearly as much to say about these episodes as he does. I know that's par for the course at this point, but given that RWBY is kind of his thing, it goes without saying that he will have much more to add for these episodes than I will for all three combined. I have seen volumes 1 to 7 of RWBY. As of recording, I haven't checked out volume 8, but I'll probably get around to that at some point. I like the show well enough to put it in my top 10 favourite anime, on the grounds that I don't think I've even seen 10 anime all the way through. So I'm gonna see what I thought of Blake vs Mikasa after not being super interested leading up to it, as well as cover Yang vs Tifa and Weiss vs Mitsuru. The latter followed the most controversial episode of its season, and the former, well, I can't say is the most controversial of its season because Dragon Ball had to take 2 L's, but I guess I see Yang vs Tifa get given more shit nowadays than Goku vs Superman 2 or Kirby vs Boo, so maybe it is? I don't know, point is I'm gonna see if I think the controversy was justified.
Luckily, her aura is durable enough to take a punch that shattered a concrete pillar.
Yang vs Tifa is, well, I said I really liked it in my Season 2 ranking, but that was basically looking exclusively at the animation. And also realised that all of my text-to-speech rankings have aged like a fine milk left out on a hot summer's day. So, rewatching the whole episode this time, do I still like it? Nope, not really. Don't get me wrong, Torian still did a great job as always. The fight is very nicely choreographed. The sound design leads to basically every hit feeling impactful enough. The limit breaks at the end are great, and I popped off for the dolphin blow. Barbara Dunkelman also did a good job reprising her role as Yang. I Burn is a great song and it made the fight even more exciting, and Tifa didn't get absolutely stomped in the fight. She landed a good amount of her own hits and even did visible damage to Yang. Now, the animation not being a stomp may sound like it should be the default setting, but given how the rest of the episode is, yeah. This fight just feels so blatantly corporate, which is extra impressive given how Death Battle wasn't even owned by Rooster Teeth at the time. I'm not saying they rigged the fight so that Yang would win. I don't know if they did, and quite frankly, I do not care. But this feels like the inverse of Shadow vs Mewtwo. Wait, no, Nem is already bringing that up in his video. I gotta come up with my own comparison. Remember in the Heihachi vs Geese review when I said that it felt like Ken vs Terry only existed to hype up Terry? Yeah, imagine that but turned up to 11 for Yang. This entire episode just feels like one big RWBY ad. Let's see, they partnered with Rooster Teeth, even getting Yang's official voice actress, which was something they couldn't do before. Yang's theme song plays during half of the fight, and yeah, it's a good song, but it kinda sucks out any kind of suspense. The animation literally ends with a banner advertising RWBY Volume 3 hanging over Tifa's corpse, and they spend a lot of time in Yang's analysis gushing about how based the world of Remnant is. It reminds me a lot of the RWBY vs Ragna DBX, which was also a very nicely animated fight that felt like it existed solely as a RWBY plug. What with RWBY's theme playing over it, RWBY curbing Ragna in the animation, and the video starting with an actual ad for Volume 6. Yang vs Tifa isn't nearly as bad in that regard. I mean, Tifa still gets to hold her own in the fight, but it definitely still feels skewed towards Yang in her series. Well, surely they must compliment Tifa in her series in some way as well, right? Well, yes, they do. There are 2 main things that they call attention to: Tifa's fighting ability and the dolphin blow. Oh, also they constantly make jokes about her tits. I can appreciate them subverting my expectations in a way by only having Boomstick blatantly say it once while the other 3 times were misleads, but I still just didn't find them funny. The only joke in the analysis I did like was Boomstick being sad about Aerith. Aerith, is that fucking... whatever. Other than that, I got pretty much nothing out of it. The animation isn't clear of issues either. While it's still well choreographed, it just isn't really pleasant to look at. I really don't like how these character models clash. Their art styles are so vastly different, and their hair and clothes are constantly flapping around. It doesn't look great. Tifa especially, I don't get why they didn't just go with her classic model. Also, Yang beats the shit out of a bouncer for doing his job and then expects the bar she just broke into to serve her without question. Nice going, dipshit. Yeah, I can definitely see why this episode is so widely disliked now. It's an experience I didn't get much out of. It doesn't feel as corporate as RWBY vs Ragna, but that's still not saying much. I'd probably give it a 3 out of 10. Not great at all.
So are the interns.
Allow me to take you back to my favourite time to be in the death battle community. It had been 3 weeks since Ben 10 vs Green Lantern came out, and no one would shut the fuck up about it. It was the centre of attention to the point where there weren't a whole lot of people paying attention to the next time, Weiss vs Mitsuru. But the small percentage of people I did see talking about it seemed to love creating tinfoil hat conspiracy theories about all the ways they would get it wrong. How they would rig it so that Weiss would win, how Ben vs Hal was just a way to distract people from how they were going to totally make RWBY win again out of pure bias. Then the actual episode rolled around, and every single one of those people ate shit, and it was very satisfying to see. And then no one really acknowledged it from what I saw. The attention of the community was still split between giving Ben vs Hal backlash and getting excited for Cage vs Falcon. But that aside, how was the episode? Well, upon rewatch, I really loved it. It does have some pretty massive downsides. The fight doesn't really have a setup, and the death ranked very, very low on my ranking of every death in the series. The killing blow is just Mitsuru stabbing in Weiss's general direction, and it doesn't convey her death well at all. When you only outrank Deadpool with a gun, yeah, that's not something to be proud of. Also, I'm not super big on how Weiss and her summons look. The RWBY models did not translate over to Unreal Engine very well. But everything else about the fight is top notch. It's a really fun and well choreographed sword fight with only one moment of jank that really bothered me. It uses their abilities in really fun ways. And Weiss uses her different dusts and glyphs better than a lot of the fight scenes I've seen from RWBY. Admittedly, I wish there was more teamwork with the Armagigas, but it's not a deal breaker. The voice acting is excellent, obviously, since they were able to get Cara Eberly, Weiss's official voice actress, to reprise her role. And there are some great lines for both, ranging from really funny one-liners to badass final remarks from Mitsuru. I'm also shocked at how good the analysis was. See, with pretty much every other death battle that has a female character, you can almost guarantee that Boomstick will make a very quirky joke about their chest. And considering that Weiss got a painfully unfunny joke at her expense in BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, I fully expected them to not show restraint. But they did, and that made me really happy. Also, the cutaway gags have actual jokes instead of just Boomstick suffers cartoony slapstick, please laugh. And I found most of them pretty funny. The explosion chart segment is probably my favourite cutaway they've done as far as I can remember. It was great. The episode's low points are some of the lowest of the season, and the whole show for that matter, but the good outweighs the bad enough for me to give it an 8 out of 10. It's an episode that I really love. Now let's see how Blake vs Mikasa stacks up in comparison. Well, I'm recording this like 5 days before the episode comes out, so let's hope it topped Yang vs Tifa at least.
She's like the avatar of Titan murder!
So it's been about a week since I recorded everything else, and since then I have indeed seen RWBY Volume 8, and my excitement levels for this episode have absolutely not changed at all. Yeah, I enjoyed Volume 8, but it didn't really do anything with Blake that made me excited to see her get used on Death Battle. I still just do not care about this match. That's not to say I hate it though. A few people seem to have misinterpreted my reaction to it. I'm not upset that this match is happening, and I'm not immediately discounting it. I just don't really care. It's a character I don't know versus a character I don't like. There's not really much for me to get excited about here. But the matchup itself never determines my feelings on an episode. It's all down to how much I enjoy watching it. And you know, I was going to start this segment building up, acting like this was an incredible first in-house 3D fight of the season, that just followed 2 great episodes and some comic book filler, only to reveal I was actually talking about Machamp featuring Goro the whole time. And then hopefully follow up with something like, and I liked Blake vs Mikasa too, I guess. But then I scrapped that because I would feel really bad for Machamp featuring Goro if I compared it to this one. Because, yeah, I didn't really like Blake vs Mikasa. I've watched through this whole episode twice now, or probably more by this point. On my own, I should add, so it doesn't get the benefit of me being able to remember watching it with my friends as a good experience. And it didn't really get much better on a rewatch. Let's start with the analysis. I think I've already established that I like them focusing more on story than stats, so I don't really need to repeat myself there. It was neat. The jokes, though, I liked the first cutaway, and there was the occasional other good line. The rest of it consisted of stuff like fart jokes and Boomstick unironically using words like Shrek'd, and it made me want to go back and give Lex vs Doom another shot. The jokes in this episode at points legitimately made me miss the Elon Musk tangent from Heihachi vs Geese. And that, for reference, I found less funny than most Boomstick's dad jokes. Though on that topic, props to this episode for being the first of the season to not mention Boomstick's dad at all. Legitimately the only thing I prefer about it over Yoda vs Mickey and Heihachi vs Geese. I don't really have much to say here on how well they cover the characters in the analysis or how their personalities are portrayed in the animation. That's really Nem's area of expertise since he knows them much better than I do. Moving on to the rest of the animation, I will admit that I quite like the track. I can solidly call it my 4th favourite one of the season probably. What an achievement. Maybe 3rd actually? Between this and Chaos Unraveled, it's choosing whether I'd rather listen to a song that's pretty good all the way through, or a song where I'm not super into the main verses but has a godlike chorus. I don't know, better than Apex of Doom for sure, but still below Hearts of Light and Kings of Iron for me. The choreography was pretty solid for the most part. Seeing the different kinds of dust get used with the shadows was neat. As far as I can remember, we haven't actually seen Blake use the elemental clones in the actual RWBY show for a while. Seeing Mikasa use strategy to get the upper hand was really cool. She actively analyses Blake's fighting style and tries to find the best ways to counter it. Sometimes her internal monologues feel like they kill the pace a bit though. Why did we need to hear her talk about Blake's ears if she was never going to do anything to take advantage of her heightened hearing? Also, how does double the amount of ears mean 4 times better hearing? What? I also think there are some solid shots of them swinging around that feel fast and weighty. The whole fight actually has a pretty big emphasis on moving around, and I think it mostly was handled really well. Now, the key words for these last few points have been some and for the most part. There are some really dumb bits of choreography here and there, like Blake sticking her unarmed hand out to defend against Mikasa swinging at her, and quite a few of the movements felt very static and awkward, mostly thanks to the biggest issue I have with this fight, the frame rate. The camera movement is very smooth, and so is the hair movement for some reason, but the rest of their bodies have a very inconsistent frame rate. Sometimes it's smooth, and sometimes it feels like I'm playing a game of Elite Smash. I didn't like it in All Might vs Might Guy, and it's even worse here. And unlike All Might vs Might Guy, this doesn't have some of the best choreography, music, and character animation in the entire series to balance that out. There are also some really janky looking parts, and I can't tell if that's also the fault of the frame rate or just the way the movements are done in general. Like this shot of Mikasa running genuinely broke me on my first viewing, and this shot of Blake getting punched in the face repeatedly just doesn't look right. There are various other shots in the fight that just look a bit silly to me, but nothing else I remember being too bad. Well, not much I remember at all actually, because I keep having to rewatch the fight as I write this script. That's how little impact it had on me. I just found most of it really boring. Some of the few parts I do vividly remember are the beginning and end. The beginning has Blake uncharacteristically ignore someone trying to get her to safety, then look surprised at herself grabbing Mikasa's wire, then immediately going on the aggressive and attacking Mikasa while asking to be left alone with a recycled voice clip from RWBY Volume 6. I hear both of her voice lines were reused actually, with the other one being from a game if I'm remembering right. That's a bit disappointing. I can only assume that Eren Zek wasn't available to record, but maybe it should have been postponed a bit. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, so take that with a grain of salt. Either way, it's not great that they didn't have original audio when they have access to Blake's official voice actress. On the other hand, I did like Mikasa's voice performance. Francesca Calo, I've probably mispronounced both of these names. She did pretty well. Though, much like with Heihachi, I don't have a clue what Mikasa actually sounds like, so take that with a grain of salt. Then the ending, I mean, it has this shot right here where only the blades are coloured and also Blake's hair, but not Mikasa's for some reason. But regardless, it looks incredible. This is my favourite part of the fight for sure. I also like how Blake's blood is the colour of her aura, like what happened to Yang when Adam cut her arm off. But speaking of losing limbs, Blake just doesn't give a shit. Pulls a full-on Sanji and just doesn't care about losing an arm. Except here it might actually be worse, since I'd imagine Blake would at least have some kind of emotional reaction to suffering the same injury her partner once suffered protecting her. But whatever, I guess. Then Blake makes Mikasa misfire with her last Thunder Spear and redirects it, now knowing that it won't explode on contact and that the wire at the end has to be pulled. So she uses Gamble Shroud to snap it herself after stabbing Mikasa with it. Cool concept, but in execution this is so unintentionally funny. Mikasa doesn't bleed when she gets stabbed, but also I don't care because this shot right here is what has made me laugh the hardest all season, and not in a good way. The visuals coupled with a weird death scream make me completely unable to take this moment seriously. Is it the worst death of the season? Once again I go back and forth between this and Shadow vs Ryuko in terms of which one I prefer. This one is probably worse, but I can at least get some ironic enjoyment out of it, whereas Ryuko getting exploded was just boring. And they're both well below the other 3 finishers of the season, which were all great. Then there's the final shot of Blake quite happily going to slay a titan. Her aura's broken, she's missing an arm, and there's a building-sized monster probably about to massacre her, but who cares, she's about to have the time of her life. I was kinda hoping that when they foreshadowed the titans showing up, we'd have a cool death where both of them are trying to escape. But then the winner cuts the loser's swinging gear and they fall in the Titan's path, unable to defend themselves. After Lex vs Doom and Heihachi vs Geese made good use of the environment for their kills, I was hoping that this would follow suit, but I guess not. Side note, I find it really funny how the RWBY character to suffer the least amount of visible damage on Death Battle is the only one that lost. Weiss just got knocked out, whereas Yang got concussed and Blake got disarmed. I don't know why, that's just really funny to me. And that's your lot really. A bland and boring episode that I didn't like. It had the occasional moment I thought was pretty good, but for the most part this really didn't do it for me. Right now this is my least favourite episode of the season. I'd probably give it a 4 out of 10. I find myself comparing this to She-Ra vs Wonder Woman a lot to show how a fight needs good choreography and writing on top of fluid animation for it to really work for me. She-Ra vs Wonder has some incredibly smooth animation, some of the best in the series actually, but the choreography is so boring and the dialogue is so aggressively frustrating that I can't bring myself to say that I like it. While Blake vs Mikasa has some solid choreography, bogged down by an awfully inconsistent frame rate and some really dumb moments. If you liked the episode then that's great. I'm especially happy for Your Only Mate since he's wanted this match for ages and I'd imagine he's going to get way more out of it than me. It's cool he got his dream match, but this episode really just isn't for me. Just as I'd imagine there would be people who wouldn't like some of my own dream matches. As much as I would pop off for All for One vs the Annihilator, I can totally see why some people would be bored or annoyed by it. Anyhow, speaking of matches that I really like, is Poe vs Iron Fist one of those? We seem to have another Genos vs War Machine and Black Widow vs Widowmaker on our hands. It's a character I really like and I'm pleasantly surprised to see being unfortunately fed to a Marvel character. Also, given that this will likely be a sprite fight, it's even more like Genos vs War Machine in the sense that it's being given the blatantly wrong animation style. I was asked to record my reaction to the Next Time trailer and I was trying to rack my brain around what the match could be if so many people wanted me specifically to see it. But on my way home from work I went to check if my death ranking hit 100,000 views and this was what greeted me on the YouTube Studio homepage. Thanks guys. I know I've said I hate this match before, but truth be told I've kinda come around to it. Does it suck that they still couldn't go 3 episodes in a row without using Marvel or DC again? Yeah, but also Poe is on Death Battle and I'm so fucking excited. Now no one's gonna question me on why Tai Lung's in the thumbnail this time. The fact that we're over 140 episodes into the show and we're only just now getting our first animated film character, no I don't count Beerus or Broly, is pretty sad. But also I'm just so happy that Poe's our first one. Now with that in mind, I kind of want Iron Fist to win. It's not because I prefer Iron Fist, because I don't. I like him in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon I guess, but Poe's the main protagonist of one of my favourite film series. And both of the first 2 Kung Fu Panda films are some of my favourite movies ever. But also he only wins this match as far as I know if you buy multiversal attacking potency and immeasurable speed for him. And given that the grounded hand-to-hand fight scenes are what drew me to Kung Fu Panda to begin with, turning Poe into this cosmic scale Dragon Ball character goes against a big part of why I loved his series so much in the first place. So I really hope they either don't buy multiversal Poe or they brush off the show it comes from as contradictory and non-canon. Without it, I hear Iron Fist is pretty high-end street tier, and Poe's best feats from the movies from what I remember get to like City Block and Mach 5, which Danny should be more than able to outdo. Of course I'd be sad to see Poe die, but honestly I prefer it to the alternative of him being made into a multiversal deity, which is just cursed. But you know, if they're able to make him win without making him multiversal, what more could I really want from the episode? Well, a few things actually. Obviously I want tight choreography that actually has Poe use his unorthodox fighting style of using his own weight against Danny, and since this is going to be a sprite match, I want it to be really expressive. It wouldn't feel right to not have Poe emote. Same goes for the dialogue. I like the gritty serious badass versus the goofy idiot dynamic from Cable versus Booster. I hope that they expand on that here. I also think it would feel right to go down the All Might versus Might guy and Yoda versus Mickey route of having the two respect each other's power and skill. Iron Fist could be more level-headed about it, while Poe could just be gushing about all the cool shit Danny can do during the fight. As for individual moments, have Poe go for the whooshy finger hold, but have Iron Fist figure it out and break out only to turn it around and use it on Poe himself. Then have Poe return from the spirit realm with his fully unlocked chi powers for the final part of the battle. Have them clash fists and then Poe can use his memory wipe hand wave thing while they're up close to briefly confuse Danny. Iron Fist could punch Poe into a wall and he could bounce back and hit him like the Tai Lung fight. And the final thing I'm gonna say I want is a moment near the end where Poe drops
I am the Dragon Warrior,
with no jokes to undercut it. That's all I can really think of right now. I wrote this at 1 AM and I want to wrap things up now. I still have to figure out if my review of it's going to cover any other episodes though. Cross that bridge when we get there, I guess. Also, if Boomstick doesn't name drop Tai Lung, I will drop the episode score by 5 points from what I'd otherwise give it. Anyway, time for the reaction highlights. And I'm not in them this time. Yeah, I was at work when the episode dropped and I wasn't about to ask them to wait an extra 3 hours for me to get there. Actually, most of the people didn't show up. I don't know if it was because they were busy or disinterested, probably the former, but out of our group of 12, the only people to actually make it were Brandon, Chell, and Nemesis. And Chell didn't really say much, so this is basically just the Brandon and Nem show now. And I found watching their interactions infinitely more entertaining than the actual episode, go figure. I'll close things off here. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, be sure to go check out the one that Nemesis made on these episodes as well. Now enjoy the highlight reel.
Did they spell Blake's name wrong? Only one N. Hold on, I think they spelled her name wrong. Likes Yang, that's about right, isn't it? Should just get rid of Reening and Tuna, and then it'd be pretty accurate. This reminds me of how my dad accidentally got rid of us.
Oh, you remind me of Shoto Todoroki, who also does not have a dad, good dad like me.
You remind me of how abusive my dad was.
Her astral finish is her entrance? Okay.
Oh my god, I feel like I spaced out for that whole analysis. What?
Yeah, well, it's not even like Lex versus Doom where we're like, getting upset at it. It's just kind of in one ear out the other for
Does
me.
Mikasa have nothing? No, Mikasa has no dislikes. She has no dislikes.
She's a very positive person. She loves everything.
She's famously very happy all the time. I'm dreading. I'm hoping they got rid of the fart joke. Oh, I'm hoping.
Why would they?
Together, they joined the military and got
Because it's not funny and it hurts.
Titan-slaying gear.
And that stopped them before
maneuvering
when?
equipment. Or me.
I hate it when you're right. Oh, I knew it'd be a fucking cutaway. Oh my god.
For reference, astronauts withstand about 3 Gs of force during liftoff, and fighter pilots can withstand up to 9 Gs for a second or two during aerial combat. Even just 6 Gs for a sustained period of time can be fatal for a human being, but Mikasa can survive almost twice that much and fight giant monsters at the same time.
Should just include this long, empty silence in the fucking fucking highlight reel.
It's okay.
That's very telling.
She's like the avatar of Titan murder.
Unfortunately, this blood bond with Eren means that even when he goes too far,
I guess she is like the avatar of Titan Murder, Boomstick.
There should have been a picture of Yang, because then I could believe Blake trying to kill Mikasa over it.
Some ears. She must have 4 times the hearing.
This makes sense.
I don't know why I find that so
That doesn't make sense!
Oh my god, she did try to shoot Mikasa in the back of the head. Oh my god, this is Alucard versus Spawn.
2 times 4
That was a
is
reference
8.
that Biffbeat would find funny. Why do we have 2 ears then if we only need 1? That's kind of sus.
Oh yeah, there's a fight going on.
Mikasa looks like me right now. I don't know why, but I was kind of hoping Mikasa would crash face first into the fucking wall. Oh my god, what the fuck is this?
I
try not to be too loud. I'm trying not to wake up my fucking family here.
Lex vs. Doom isn't the worst episode this
Oh,
season.
hold
Yay!
on. Was that a Beyond the Fourth Wall reference?
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the frame rate, but I didn't think it was that bad. But I'm also
I mean,
easily entertained.
it's not. I think it's the worst one we've had this season. Is what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
I think the other.
Sadly, I agree.
Oh! Oh.